Greetings, Otaku Faithful. Thank you for joining me again this week. Once again, this is Larry Williams, OAW Commander-in-Chief, and I'm here to bring you all a special Supergirl episode review right here on Otaku Assemble Weekly, and I'm here to bring you all my review, my thoughts on the Supergirl Flash crossover episode entitled World's Finest. Now, general thoughts on the episode. The suits over at Warner Brothers need to take note because this is how you do an on-screen superhero team-up. I really enjoyed this episode. I thought that the team-up between Supergirl and the Flash was well done. I loved Barry and Kara's dialogue. I loved their exchanges. I thought that was well written. Granted, I do have concerns about the villain plot and motivation in this episode, but really, honestly and truly, we just needed to get the ball rolling in order to get these two superheroes on screen together. And for the most part, considering that it is a, mid-season episode, this isn't a premiere or finale, all in all, I think overall the episode was still well done. So let's just jump into it. So pretty much the plot of the episode is simple. We're using the villain revenge plot again. It's pretty much the same plot we used in the Livewire episode at the beginning of the season, and we actually get Livewire's return to the series, which I thought that was funny because Livewire, that was the last episode of Supergirl that I've seen, and so to see her return in the first episode I pick up since, I thought was kind of funny. But and we do still have the same motivation for her this week with, her wanting revenge on Cat Grant and on Supergirl. But the main villain focus this week was Silver Banshee. We get her origin and her emergence as a villain in this episode. Now, I will go ahead and I'll comment that the Silver Banshee origin and setup, that I actually dug. I like that they took the supernatural route with the character, with it being a family curse and whatnot. And they've already sort of been slowly building up to it in previous episodes. So I dug it. Now, granted, I will say I think they could have done even more with the character. But considering that it was a villain team up so much as it was a superhero team up too, and there's only limited time in an episode, I'm pretty sure they'll be bringing her back as a reoccurring character. So we still have time to sort of flesh her out some more, to flesh out her abilities some more, to do more interesting things with her in the future. So, and that pretty much is the main crux of the plot. The two villains decide to team up to take revenge out on Cat, but at the same time, Barry arrives in the Supergirl universe. We get a real brief explanation between why that is. Apparently Barry is fast enough to actually travel between worlds. Now, one issue, this has not been set up in the Flash series yet. Barry is still not fast enough to travel to the other Earths by himself. And also we know that Barry had a speed mechanism on his costume at the time. Once again, there hasn't been enough setup to fully explain how Barry has gotten that fast yet, but once again, brief explanation just so that we can get the ball rolling on what's going on in the episode. So Barry arrives in the Supergirl universe by accident, and it just so happens the first person that he rescues is Kara herself. Find out that she's a superhero, and then once they find out about the whole supervillain team up, they decide to join forces to take down Silver Banshee and Livewire. And that, by and large, that's the whole crux of the episode. So let's see what really worked in this episode. Like, as I mentioned briefly before, I think the dialogue between Kara and Barry, I think that worked really well. I also like the fact that for Supergirl, Wynn is pretty much the brain of the operation, and I dug that he already understood the whole multiverse theory and whatnot. So throwing Barry into that mix, having someone that Wynn can bounce that sort of talk up with, I thought that was really cool. Like, seeing them two interact with each other, I kind of got the whole feeling like we did in the first Avengers film when Tony and Bruce started talking. It's like, oh my God, how great is it to be understood? Someone who understands this science. So that I thought worked really well. Once again, Cat As I mentioned before, I have not been keeping up with Supergirl, but Kat continues to be one of my favorite characters on the show. I love her dialogue. I always have. I think that still works really well. And I'll be honest, even though I dug the whole Silver Banshee origin and setup, even Siobhan herself as a character, I kind of dug. Now, granted, like I said, I felt like there wasn't enough, but that's because they've already been kind of setting her up in previous episodes. So I'm pretty sure if I'll go back and rewatch those episodes, I'll get, the questions I have about her will get filled in there. But I thought that was done pretty well. Also, I'm finally glad that the show has gotten to a place where we no longer have Kara suffering from her inferiority complex. That was the major issue I had with the show early on, because Kara was always measuring herself up to her cousin. She was always measuring herself up to Superman, and I thought in many instances unfairly. And the fact that she has seemed to kind of move past that, I'm like, okay, now we're getting the maturity that I expected from Kara at the beginning of the series. So I dug that. I also dug that her inner conflict in this episode had to do with the events that happened previously in the season, where Kara lost control, and how her public image and public perception has kind of been destroyed because of that. And Kara sort of staying the course, keeping the faith. Her faith is rewarded at the end of the episode when the citizens of National City step in to defend her during the final battle. That I freaking dug, and I definitely got, that Spider-Man moment where it's like, oh yes, the citizens come to the rescue of the superhero. I'm not gonna lie, was it cheesy? Absolutely, positively, but I loved it. I ate up every second of it. And the fact that Livewire gets defeated, granted she does get defeated in the same way, which I was like, you guys could have came up with another way to do that. But the fact that it came from the firemen, the civilians, the citizens were the ones who defeated Livewire this time around, I dug that. So all of those things I think worked really well in the episode. Now, things that didn't work so well. Like I said, once again, the fact that we're using the revenge motive, there's only so many times you can use that, and there's only so many times you can use it against the same person before it gets tired, So that I thought, I was like, okay, you guys could have done a little bit better job with that. Of course, the relationship stuff still doesn't work for me. Granted, like I said, I admit I am not the target audience for the show. And the way they write their relationships, it's a bit different than the way they do it on the CW. Granted, the CW shows don't really do it much better. When you're talking about the relationships in Flash and in Arrow and in Legends of Tomorrow, they're not done too much better than they are in Supergirl. They're pretty on par. But the whole Kara, Jimmy Olsen thing, I'm not feeling it. The fact that they spent so much time on it this episode, I'm like, the fact that y'all got the Flash on here, you really could spend more time with that. With the Silver Banshee thing, you could spend more time on that. And the fact that Alex wasn't in this week's episode because of the subplot that's going on with her and Jean, apparently, we didn't get any of that this week. And that was a little bit of a letdown for me personally, because Alex is one of my favorite characters on Supergirl. So she wasn't available for this episode. I was like, okay, wish we could have seen at least a scene or two with her. Let's see. Oh, and I do want to mention this, because it is the one thing that is one of the reasons why it's so hard for me to get into the show and to keep up with it. And once again, because I'm not the targeted audience, but the pop culture references in the dialogue, once again, they're not meant for me. And I understand that. I get that. They're not meant for me. And it's real funny sort of to compare and contrast Supergirl with The Flash, because in The Flash, they'll use pop culture references, but they're all like geek references, right? Star Wars or Star Trek or this, that, and the other. Whereas Supergirl, it's pop culture references like, mainstream music and stuff. Like, they drop Beyonce and Taylor Swift's name in the dialogue in this episode. And once I kind of picked up on that, that's when I really noticed. I'm like, yeah, that's probably another reason why I'm having difficulty, you know, getting engaged with the show, because even the pop culture references used in the dialogue aren't meant for me. They're not meant for my demographic. So, but like I said, that's a reoccurring thing with the show. Some people like it, some people don't. Hey, this is just a matter of taste. This isn't anything objectively wrong with the show now. Don't get me wrong. But all in all, so that pretty much wraps up all my thoughts. I dug it. I really liked the crossover, and I would really love to see more in the future, but as it still stands, the future of Supergirl is still up in the air. It's my understanding that this past Friday, CW renewed their shows last week. This past Friday, CBS renewed several of its shows. Supergirl still wasn't on the list. So I know that they're, you know, it's kind of in the air whether or not Supergirl will get renewed for a second season. I hope it does, because even though the show's not meant for me, the fact that it is as successful as it is, keep this in mind. You guys can go look this up, because I had to go look this up. Supergirl is outperforming the Arrowverse. It's getting more viewers and higher ratings than Flash, Arrow, and Legends of Tomorrow individually. So it's beating out the rest of the Arrowverse. That's fantastic, especially since it's on a Monday night, which is a pretty hard block. So I'm glad that the show is doing successful. I want to see that success continue. So hopefully we'll be getting news of the show's renewal in the next couple of weeks. And on that note, I want to go ahead and I also want to mention, granted, like I said, I have to go back and I have to catch up on a lot of what's been going on this show. But I haven't done a Supergirl review since the pilot episode, and I did originally intend to do them weekly. I tell you what, to my viewers, to the Otaku faithful, if you all want to see me do more Supergirl reviews, please let me know in the comments below. I'll also see about doing the YouTube cards, because apparently I think you can do like polls on your actual videos. I'll mess around with that, see what happens. But if you all do want to see me do Supergirl episode reviews, please, in the comments below, let me know. If you like this video, feel free to thumb it up. Share if you will. And as always, be sure to subscribe to the OAW YouTube channel. Annotations will be above head. So, that's going to wrap up this special Supergirl episode review. I want to thank you all for joining me again this week. Join me tomorrow night for my Flash episode review. And with that being said, this has been Larry Williams, OAW Commander-in-Chief, signing off. And until next time, peace.